This video is about science number 22, groundwater in California's Central Valley. On the previous video, or 2 videos ago actually, I mentioned the other paper, which looks like this. Totally blank except for the title, and you're going to draw the water cycle. This one is groundwater, but it's groundwater in a way that we have it around here. This picture in the book is more like the way groundwater is in Missouri or Michigan or Iowa or one of those places. So they show the evaporation coming up out of the ground. Most of our evaporation doesn't do that. It comes from the Pacific Ocean. So let's begin by labeling this arrow right here. So we're going to write most evaporation comes from the ocean. So just write that right in the arrow. Most evaporation comes from the ocean. So when we get a winter storm, that's where the weather starts, is over on the coast. All right, so that evaporation creates clouds. So let's make some clouds. You can even have your clouds overlap this arrow if you want. So have some clouds. Kind of go around the title a little bit. And make them smaller up over the mountains because they're farther away. There's more of them because when they get to the mountains, that's where they all kind of crash together. By the way, you're going to need your colored pencils as well. I've got this stapler here because my colored pencils keep wanting to attack me. So draw those clouds in. And then you're going to draw some rain. So do some slanty lines coming off the clouds down onto the ground. And it can rain over here on the foothills too, but not so much over the valley. It rains more as the clouds begin going up the hill and cooling down. And so we're going to label that precipitation. Precipitation. You don't have to write this in cursive. We're labeling a picture. We'll be labeling some other areas in a minute, but now I want you to get a blue, something that's not super dark, like a turquoise blue, something that looks definitely blue, but not the dark navy blue. And we're going to label a few things so we can understand what's going on here. So I want you to begin, you see this line right here? This represents a river coming down out of the mountains. So we're going to make it blue. And then go right down here underneath that thing. I'll explain that thing in a minute. You might already know what that is. Take your pencil and label that river. And down here too, river. This right here is a dam. So kind of color it in light gray with your regular pencil, or if you have a gray colored pencil, you can do that. And let's fill in this lake, or sorry, this reservoir, it's called, with blue. We're using this blue color to represent all the parts of the groundwater process. So now you can label this reservoir. Reservoir. Sounds like a French word. You hold that up close so you can see it. Reservoir. Pause the video if you need to spell it. Okay. So that's the beginning of our water cycle. So let's take our pencil, the blue pencil, and we're going to kind of go backwards through our water cycle. Well, let's go forward. So let's take this arrow here and make it blue, because it's part, you don't have to color it in, just outline it blue. So it's part of the direction of the movement of the water. So the evaporation comes from the ocean, the clouds come over, and it begins to rain. Or what happens in the winter? It begins to snow in the mountains. So, there we go. Precipitation. So set this pencil aside for a moment. And we're going to do a little bit of coloring so that we can see that we have snow in the mountains. We're going to make a line, kind of a wiggly line that kind of goes like that. And then you're going to color green underneath it. Just do a little bit of green up here, because pretty soon it's all going to be the underground, peeking underground version. So just make this green through here. All the way down above the river. This is where we're seeing above ground. Don't spend a lot of time, if you see how I'm doing the side of my pencil so that it fills in quickly. That should be all it takes right there. So then up here we're going to label this snow, so somebody doesn't just think we forgot to color it. If you want to go back later and make the sky blue, that's fine with the white clouds in it. Right now I'm not going to do that. So now we're going to make some arrows that are coming down like this, pointing toward the river and toward the valley, and we're going to make those blue. So once it rains or snows, then we have runoff. So you're going to label these arrows runoff, R-U-N-O-F-F, runoff from rain and melting snow. So now let's label some of these layers over in here. So they talked about the zone of aeration. So that's this zone right here, right under the surface of the earth. Zone of aeration. If you need to know how to spell it, it's one of the orange words in the article on page 40. So let's color that kind of an orange color. Give it because I don't have, if you have a kind of a yellow like in the book, you can do that. I don't have that color, so I'm going to make mine orange. Don't make it very dark because you want to be able to read your words. Just make it look distinctly different from the other layers. So this is where the rocks are full of holes, or where it's sand or gravel, and the water from the rain and from the river can soak down into the next zone, which is the zone of saturation. That's an R. That's also in your book. So I don't need to stop for you to be able to spell it. Just pause the video if you don't know how to spell these things and look them up. Under the zone of saturation is some impermeable rock. That means nothing can get through it. And then below that we have another zone of saturation. So let's pick some colors. Let's use brown for the impermeable rock. So we're going to color this section brown. And I need to get a brown, not a red brown, or I won't be able to tell it from the orange in my zone of aeration. So there's that. And this is also This is what's called bedrock. It's the bottom rock. We learned about this last year. The rock that's below everything else. Probably the original rock from creation. It is also impermeable. So let's color it brown also. Just quickly and lightly, maybe go around the words, color this brown. So your eyes can see that this is the rock, the impermeable rock. And then there's the two zones of saturation. So let's give those a color. Trying to think if they should be blue like the rest of it. I think they should. So let's lightly shade in. I'm going to go sharpen my pencil. I'll be right back. Ah, the magic of film. Pause life. Okay, so let's shade this in blue, because this is also water. Don't make it super dark like that right there, because it's just too hard to see what's going on if you make it really, really dark. But we'll know. Zone of saturation. And there's another one. This part right in here is also where there's water completely filling all the air pockets between the rocks or the sand. Completely fills it. And some of this water comes from here, so let's put an arrow. And from here. And from the river. Let's see, let's go down here where it'll fit better. Okay, so let's label one of those or two of these Groundwater Recharge. So we'll write it right here. Groundwater Recharge. Like recharging your battery, but it's where the groundwater gets refilled up. From the river, from the reservoir. This is also groundwater recharge. We don't need to label it because you can tell they all look the same. So this is how that water gets underground in the first place. It soaks down from the rivers, soaks down from the reservoirs or lakes if there are any. We don't have a lot of lakes around here. Most of it's reservoirs, which are man-made lakes up in the mountains. We went to one on a field trip a few years ago. If you've never gone to one, it's really interesting to see. It's a river, so the river came down here and just kept flowing, and then they came along and built in a V-shaped valley in the mountains. They filled it up with concrete and made a wall, and now it holds back the water. So the water comes in by way of clouds and from evaporation from the ocean. It rains and snows on the mountains. The snow is very important. It's what stores the water all winter, and then when it melts, the runoff from rain and melting snow comes down the rivers, soaks into the ground, and creates this underground source of water. Now, how do we get to that water? What we do, we drill a well. So out here we've got a little farmer, and he's going to make a little well. I'm just going to draw this funny little thing, looks like R2-D2 or something. And he drills down, down, down. He doesn't usually stop at the first level, in case that one dries up or that one's kind of dirty. He goes all the way down very deep in the ground. Or the city might have a well, like Dinuba does, and Reedley does, Kingsburg does. Those big towers up in the air that look kind of like this on legs. And they drill down, 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 down. So that's also where water comes through the cycle. So we're going to put a blue line on there with arrows going up, because the water comes up out of the ground. They have to pump it. You have to use an electric pump to get it to come out. And then they can water the fields, water the fruit trees, give people water to drink. And so some of that water comes up. So we could put a few little lines of evaporation, because some of it does come off of the fruit trees and off of the grass and the cotton plants and things like that. But most of our evaporation that forms our clouds for rain and snow come from the ocean. So that is the groundwater process in the California Central Valley. Almost all of our water comes from wells, and then some comes from reservoirs that have canals that come down and bring water. The system of canals that goes through Dinuba, that comes from the mountains, from a reservoir up in the mountains. So that's how we get our water out of the ground. Pretty interesting. 22% of the surface of the fresh water on the surface of the earth is groundwater.